a hearty welcome to all our colleagues at the headquarters as well as at the regional centers. The lecture series is being organized as a tribute to Professor G. Reddy, the founder Vice Chancellor of IGNOU. He was also the founding Vice Chancellor of the first Open University in India, the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University in Hyderabad in 1982. The Memorial Lecture Series was established by the university in 1996 and is held annually on July 2nd. This year's theme is Teachers' Education Initiatives of IGNOU and Transformative Changes in the Indian Education Scenario. Education, it is the most powerful instrument for transforming society, and teachers are the architects of that transformation. Today's program is a tribute to Professor Reddy's vision of offering teacher education through open and distance learning. Through its various teacher education programs, IGNOU has continuously strengthened the competencies of in-service and aspiring teachers. Today, it is an opportunity to reflect on teacher education initiatives of IGNOU and transformative changes that are taking place in Indian education scenario. This time, we are celebrating this occasion in a slightly different manner. We are going to have this event in two parts. In first part, we have a memorial lecture where event is graced by presence of Professor Pankaj Arora and Professor Mohan Menon. In the afternoon at 2:30 p.m., we shall continue with an engaging panel discussion on the theme, where we will have eminent panel of experts who will deliberate on the transformative changes that are taking place in Indian education scenario. And we will also discuss the pivotal role of teacher education in shaping the future of our nation. Today's event is a tribute to Professor G. Reddy's vision of including teacher education in open and distance learning. We are looking forward to hear to our chief guest and the memorial lecture. Our guest will be here any moment. I request you to kindly be seated. We will start shortly as our guest arrives. I extend a warm welcome to Srimati Pramila Reddy ji and her daughter, Ms. Jyoti Kadam. Our guests have started to come. We will start our program shortly. Our guests have arrived. Namaskar. I, Vijeta Banwari, feel privileged to warmly welcome you all on behalf of Indira Gandhi National Open University. I welcome all the dignitaries present with us today, our chief guest, Professor Pankaj Arora, Chairperson, National Council for Teacher Education, Ministry of Education, Government of India, our distinguished speaker of the day, Professor Mohandas P. Menon, Chairperson, Disha Global Trust, and former Deputy Vice Chancellor, Wawasan Open University, Malaysia, respected Srimati Pramila Reddy ji and her daughter, Ms. Jyoti Gadam, Professor Uma Kanjilal, Vice Chancellor, IGNOU, and Professor Jitendra Srivastav, Registrar, IGNOU. I also once again extend a warm welcome to all colleagues at the headquarters as well as at the regional centers. I also extend a hearty welcome to all our learners and viewers who have joined us through different digital media platforms. The lecture series is being organized as a tribute to Professor G. Ramareddy, the founder Vice Chancellor of IGNOU. The memorial lecture series was established by the university in 1996 and is held annually on July 2nd. This year's theme is Teachers' Education Initiatives of IGNOU and Transformative Changes in the Indian Education Scenario. Today's program is a tribute to Professor Reddy's vision of offering teacher education through open and distance learning. This event is scheduled in two parts. In first part, we have a memorial lecture where the event is graced by the presence of Professor Pankaj Arora and Professor Menon. In the afternoon at 2:30 p.m., we shall continue with an engaging panel discussion on the theme. Let us start today's program with the University Kulgeet. I request everyone to kindly rise for the Kulgeet. May I now request all the dignitaries on the dais to kindly proceed for the lighting of the ceremonial lamp, marking the formal inauguration of today's program. I also request Mrs. Pramila Reddy ji to kindly join the dignitaries on the stage for the lighting of the lamp. May I request Ms. Jyoti ji also to kindly come on the stage. May I also request all the dignitaries to kindly offer floral tributes to the portrait of Professor G. Ram Reddy ji. May I now request Professor Jitendra Srivastav, Chairperson, Organizing Committee, to kindly deliver the welcome address.
नमस्कार सभी लोगों को। इकतीसवें प्रोफेसर जी राम रेड्डी स्मृति व्याख्यान के अवसर पर मंच पर उपस्थित विश्वविद्यालय की माननीय कुलपति प्रोफेसर उमाकांत जी लाल जी, आज के मुख्य अतिथि राष्ट्रीय अध्यापक शिक्षा परिषद NCTE के माननीय अध्यक्ष प्रोफेसर पंकज अरोड़ा जी, आज स्मृति व्याख्यान देने के लिए हम लोगों के बीच उपस्थित वावासन विश्वविद्यालय मलेशिया के माननीय पूर्व उप कुलपति प्रोफेसर मोहनदास बी मेनन जी, स्मृति शेष प्रोफेसर जी राम रेड्डी जी की सहधर्मिणी श्रीमती प्रमिला रेड्डी जी, उनकी सुपुत्री सुश्री ज्योति जी, सभागार में उपस्थित आदरणीय प्रोफेसर कर्णम पुष्पनाथम जी, आदरणीय प्रोफेसर कैलाश चंद्र शर्मा जी, उपस्थित विशिष्ट अतिथिगण, मीडिया समूहों से आए पत्रकारगण, विश्वविद्यालय परिवार के सभी सदस्य, विदेशी अध्ययन केंद्रों से जुड़े मित्र और यहाँ उपस्थित तथा सोशल मीडिया माध्यमों के जरिए जुड़े प्रिय विद्यार्थियों, आप सबका हार्दिक अभिनंदन है। मित्रों, हम लोग प्रतिवर्ष अपने विश्वविद्यालय के संस्थापक कुलपति प्रोफेसर जी राम रेड्डी जी को उनकी पुण्यतिथि पर याद करते हैं, अपनी भावांजलि अर्पित करते हैं। प्रोफेसर रेड्डी इस महादेश में दूर शिक्षा के पहले स्वप्नदर्शी थे। इस देश के एक महान शायर रघुपति सहाय फिराक गोरखपुरी का एक शेर है, उन्होंने न जाने किस अर्थ में कहा था, लेकिन मुझे प्रोफेसर रेड्डी के लिए यह याद आया। बहुत पहले से उन कदमों की आहट जान लेते हैं, तुझे ऐ जिंदगी हम दूर से पहचान लेते हैं। प्रोफेसर रेड्डी ने इस देश के उन लाखों लोगों की जिंदगी को दूर से पहचान लिया जिनके जीवन में शिक्षा का अंधेरा था, उजाला नहीं था शिक्षा का। बड़ी बात होती है, लोग अपनी जिंदगी के मायने खोज लेते हैं, दूसरों की जिंदगी का अर्थ खोजना हमेशा मुश्किल होता है। तो प्रोफेसर रेड्डी ने यह किया और बहुत ठीक से किया। आज इग्नू लगभग 80 लाख लोगों की ज़िंदगी को रोशन कर चुका है। वो जो दूर से ज़िंदगी पहचानने का मामला था और निरंतर इस दिशा में अग्रसर है। कहने की आवश्यकता नहीं कि यह सिर्फ और सिर्फ उस स्वप्न के कारण हुआ जिसे प्रोफेसर रेड्डी ने देखा। हम लोग लंबी यात्रा कर चुके हैं, यथार्थ के कई पड़ाव पार कर चुके हैं और आज 40 वर्ष बाद विश्व का सबसे बड़ा विश्वविद्यालय है। जिनके किरदार से आती हो सदाकत की महक, उनकी तदरीस से पत्थर भी पिघल सकते हैं। बस भीतर होना चाहिए कि हमें कुछ बदलना है, कुछ करना है। आज स्वागत के क्रम में सबसे पहले प्रोफेसर जी राम रेड्डी की पूर्ण स्मृति को प्रणाम निवेदित कर रहा हूँ। उनके स्वप्न हम सबकी आँखों तक आ गए हैं, हम सबकी आँखों में आ गए हैं। यही अमरत्व है। भारतीय जीवन दर्शन इसी तरह के विचारों के अमरत्व को ही मानता है, विचारों का अमरत्व बना रहता है और हम लोग उसी क्रम में हैं। इस वर्ष व्याख्यान के केंद्र में है टीचर एजुकेशन, शिक्षक शिक्षा। जब यह विषय सुनिश्चित हुआ और मुख्य अतिथि के विषय में चर्चा हुई तो हमारी माननीय कुलपति प्रोफेसर उमा कांजी लाल जी के जहन में जो पहला नाम आया वो प्रोफेसर पंकज अरोड़ा जी का था। उन्होंने कहा कि उन्हें ही हम लोग बुलाते हैं। आप सब जानते हैं मित्रों, हम सब शिक्षा के लोग हैं। प्रोफेसर अरोड़ा जाने माने शिक्षा शास्त्री हैं, एनसीटी के चेयरपर्सन हैं। उन्होंने विश्वविद्यालय का मैडम का निवेदन स्वीकार किया, आज हमारे बीच हैं, हमारा मान बढ़ाया। सर, मैं आपका हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं, अभिनंदन करता हूं। आपके आने से हमारा मान बढ़ा है। आज स्मृति व्याख्यान देने के लिए प्रोफेसर मोहनदास बी मेनन जी कोच्चि से चलकर हम लोगों के बीच आए हैं, अपने घर आए हैं। इग्नू उनका अपना घर है। इस विश्वविद्यालय को आकार देने वालों में जो आरंभिक लोग थे उनमें प्रोफेसर मोहन मेनन भी एक हैं। वे स्कूल ऑफ एजुकेशन के पहले डायरेक्टर थे, संस्थापक निदेशक थे स्कूल के। आज हम सब जानते हैं, आज ये टीचर एजुकेशन की बात कर रहे हैं। सब कुछ तो एकदम आकार देने वालों में से रहे। पिछले 40 वर्षों में इग्नू ने विकास की जो इबारत लिखी है वह उन्हें सुख दे रही होगी। अपने घर आकर अच्छा लगता है सर। हिंदी के महाकवि हुए हैं रहीम का एक बहुत प्रसिद्ध दोहा है, यों रहीम सुख होत है बढ़त देख निज गोत, ज्यों बढ़री अखियाँ निरख अखियन को सुख होत। आज अपने परिवार को विकसित देखकर आपको बहुत अच्छा लग रहा होगा सर। आप आज आए, अपने घर आए, विश्वविद्यालय का मान बढ़ाया। हम आपका हार्दिक अभिनंदन करते हैं सर, गौरव महसूस कर रहे हैं आप। मित्रों, हमारी अपनी माननीय कुलपति जी, आज मैं नॉर्मली अपने व्याख्यानों में कविताएं कम उद्धृत करता हूं, आज कर रहा हूं। एक शेर कभी पढ़ा था कि अभी रोशन हुआ जाता है रास्ता, वो देखो एक औरत आ रही है। 40 वर्षों के इतिहास में विश्वविद्यालय के 38वें वर्ष में महिला कुलपति के रूप में प्रोफेसर उमा कांजी लाल जी ने कार्यभार ग्रहण किया। जब से चूँकि हमारे अपने बीच की हैं, सब लोग उनको जानते पहचानते हैं, आज वो इस कार्यक्रम की अध्यक्षता कर रही हैं। विश्वविद्यालय को तकनीक के क्षेत्र में अग्रणी बनाने वाली हैं वे। उन्होंने बहुत काम किया इस विश्वविद्यालय में, जो टेक्नोलॉजी है उसको संभव करने में उनकी बड़ी भूमिका है। हमें दूर शिक्षा के साथ ऑनलाइन शिक्षा के क्षेत्र में अग्रदूत बनाने वाली, सहजता, सरलता और कर्मठता की पर्याय रही हैं। जब मैं लेक्चरर था तब भी मैं देखता था 9:30 बजे वो आ जाती थी, देर शाम तक अपना काम करती थी और जाती थी। चूँकि मैं कैंपस में रहता था तो देखता था, तब से कभी उनकी कार्यपद्धति में मैंने कोई परिवर्तन नहीं देखा, लगातार रहीं। अपने निर्णयों में वे अत्यंत दृढ़ हैं, हमेशा नया सोचती हैं, नवोन्मेष करने के बारे में सोचती हैं और उसे क्रियान्वित भी करती हैं। लगातार हम लोग देख रहे हैं इसे। उनके कारण ही यह कार्यक्रम इतना विचारवान और अर्थपूर्ण हो पाया है। मैडम, मैं विश्वविद्यालय के कुल सचिव और आयोजन समिति के अध्यक्ष के रूप में आपका अभिनंदन करता हूं, स्वागत करता हूं। मैं स्वागत करता हूं आदरणीय श्रीमती प्रमिला रेड्डी जी का। वे हमारा निवेदन मानकर कई बार स्वास्थ्य अच्छा न रहने पर भी सुदूर हैदराबाद से हम लोगों के बीच आती हैं, हमारा मान सम्मान बढ़ाती हैं। हम हमेशा उनके स्वागत के लिए तत्पर रहते हैं। उनके साथ उनकी पुत्री सुश्री ज्योति जी भी आई हैं, वो भी आती रहती हैं, परिवार के सदस्य आते रहते हैं। आज इस व्याख्यान के अवसर पर मैडम, मैं आपका, ज्योति जी आपका हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं, अभिनंदन करता हूं। आज दोपहर बाद जो चर्चा होनी है, जो पैनल डिस्कशन होना है, उसके लिए जिन लोगों को हमने आमंत्रित किया है विश्वविद्यालय ने, और उन लोगों ने हमारे निवेदन को स्वीकार किया है, ऐसे विद्वत समुदाय प्रोफेसर NV वर्गीस जी, प्रोफेसर कर्णम पुष्पनाथम जी और प्रोफेसर कैलाश चंद शर्मा जी का भी मैं हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं, अभिनंदन करता हूं। आप सबके आने से विश्वविद्यालय के इस कार्यक्रम को, हम सबको एक ऊंचाई मिली है, एक गरिमा मिली है। हम आभारी हैं, आपके स्वागत करते हैं। मैं आयोजन समिति के सभी सदस्यों का हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं, जिनके कठोर परिश्रम से हम कार्यक्रम की इस अकादमिक ऊंचाई तक पहुंचे हैं। मैं विश्वविद्यालय परिवार के प्रत्येक सदस्य का हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूं, स्वागत करता हूं। विद्यार्थियों की उपस्थिति इस आयोजन को अर्थवत्ता दे रही है। प्रिय विद्यार्थियों, मैं आप सबका हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं। एक शेर आप सबके लिए, और उसके साथ आप आए तो बहारों ने लुटाई खुशबू, फूल तो फूल थे, कांटों से भी आई खुशबू। आप सबका हार्दिक स्वागत, अभिनंदन और धन्यवाद।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर। It is our distinct privilege that today we have the opportunity to have Professor Pankaj Arora and Professor Mohan Menon with us. We are looking forward to listening to their inspiring thoughts and enriching experience. As a token of our heartfelt gratitude and appreciation, may I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Uma Kanjilal, to kindly felicitate Professor Pankaj Arora with a sapling, shawl and a painting on behalf of the entire IGNOU fraternity. May I now request Professor Uma Kanjilal Madam to kindly felicitate Professor Mohan Menon. The beautiful Gond art paintings presented to our guest are created by masters students of School of Performing and Visual Arts under the supervision of Professor Lakshman, Director of School of Performing and Visual Arts. May I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, ma'am, to kindly felicitate Mrs. Pramila Reddy, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you.
May I request our audience to express our gratitude through a big round of applause. These are the beautiful Gondar paintings presented, and they are created by master students of our School of Performing and Visual Arts. These students have prepared these paintings under the supervision of Professor Lakshman, Director of School of Performing and Visual Arts. Thank you so much. May I now request Professor Jitendra Srivastav, sir, to kindly felicitate Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Uma Kanjilar. Thank you. Professor G. Reddy, a legendary educationist and the architect of distance education in India, served as the first Vice Chancellor of IGNOU from 1985 to 1989. He was also the founding Vice Chancellor of the first Open University in India, the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University in Hyderabad in 1982. Professor G. Reddy's visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to inclusive and accessible education continue to inspire IGNOU's journey. To celebrate the life, vision, and enduring legacy of this legendary educationist, let us now present a short film on Professor G. Reddy.
Millions of learners, countless lives transformed, globally recognized as the world's largest university by student strength. But statistics alone cannot explain this achievement. To understand IGNOU's success, one must return to where it all began, with a visionary and an idea ahead of its time. The journey started with one man's vision to build a university that, in the truest sense, could be called the People's University. That personality was Professor G. Reddy, IGNOU's founding Vice Chancellor.
I went and saw the minister and also the secretary. Minister, as I said, was Mr. Pant, secretary was Mr. Answarup. Both of them said, no, it must be discussed during this session, we'll see what we could do. Again, I think Mr. Pant intervened, must have seen the Prime Minister, saw to it that it was taken up for discussion. This decision of the Parliamentary Advisory Committee was changed.
This is the first convocation of Indira Gandhi National Open University. On this historic occasion, I extend a warm welcome to everyone present here, the dignitaries, guests and students. Explaining the difference between the convocation of a conventional university and that of an open university, Lord Briggs once said, I quote, "In the convocation of a formal university, the proud parents go to take the photographs of their children, while in the open university, it is the proud children who go to take the photographs of their parents." On this occasion,
our standards are as good as the standards of any conventional university. In fact, I would say that in the conventional system, standards vary from institution to institution. We have 6,000 and odd colleges in this country. It means there are 6,000 and odd standards. Whereas in our case, there is only one standard, and I must say that the standards are very high. And I say this because the material is prepared by the experts and prepared with a lot of caution and care. Any mistake we commit is a fatal mistake. It's not a mistake committed in a classroom where well, we can sometimes get away with some of these things. That's not possible here.
He was the person who had a vision. He, because of his background, as he hails from a village where educational facilities were not there practically, he has to complete his matriculation privately, and that motivated him to see as he grew in the university as a teacher, professor, and went to London. There also he found the British Open University being open to people who did not have education before, and that motivated him.
Professor G. Ram Reddy realized early that the conventional system of education may not be able to serve the needs of every learner. This is when he began looking for alternatives. One institutional structure that particularly appeared promising was the concept of an open university. The timing mattered. This was a period when the Open University in the United Kingdom was gaining international recognition, proving that such an idea could succeed.
And I have no doubt in my mind that this university will leave impression on the educational system of this country.
Today, IGNOU is one family, a total of 1,450 employees working across India and a learner strength of more than 3.9 million, a number that stands as a hallmark of the selfless service rendered by every employee, building a better future for tomorrow.
This university is the national asset. We have an excellent team. We have been able to collect an excellent team. Some of them are tops in the country. So far it has been a homogeneous team, and I hope whoever is the successor would see that it remains a homogeneous team.
Professor Reddy's managerial style stemmed from one belief, that the interest of each individual participant leads, in turn, to the larger welfare of the organization. With this visionary approach, Professor G. Ram Reddy transformed India's education system through open and distance learning, by democratizing education, by ensuring equitable access to learning opportunities, regardless of a learner's background or circumstance.
Professor Ram Reddy struggled not only to establish it, but also a permanent award for the university on a large scale. So that because he knew how British Open University worked, how the Open Universities need, what kind of accommodation, what kind of infrastructure is needed. Studios are required. We can't go for everything elsewhere. That's how he started.
Professor Reddy advocated for an open learning system that embraces every form of education, formal, non-formal, and informal, affirming that learning is a continuous journey, enriching lives at every stage, beyond the boundaries of profession or qualification. Most importantly, he laid emphasis on universal access to higher education as a foundation for economic development.
He was not only institution builder, he was a builder of the people. And he was a very visionary academic administrator. In our classroom, he used to mention that two things are going to be very, very important in future. One is distance education and the other is environment.
He developed a system which is accessible,
and inclusive. And several, many youth, particularly from rural backgrounds and other socio-economic backgrounds who cannot afford to have continuous regular education in regular universities, they choose distance education and open education.
Professor G. Ram Reddy's contribution to the cause of higher education in India and in other developing countries earned him worldwide acclaim and recognition. A people's university built on one man's vision, and today it continues to write his story.
Over the years, IGNOU has made quality education accessible to millions across the country. In our next segment, Learner's Voice, Changing Lives, Impacting the Future. For the first time, we are making a departure from the conventional format, and we have invited two learners who have completed a teacher education program from IGNOU to share their journeys, aspirations, and achievements as distance learners. With great pleasure, I now first invite Ms. Rupali Bhatt. She is currently a teacher at Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan. She has completed B.Ed and pursuing MA and MA English from IGNOU. Welcome, Rupali.
Respected Vice Chancellor Ma'am, Honorable Chief Guests, and all the learned people present here, a very good morning to all of you. First of all, I would like to express my heartful gratitude to IGNOU for giving me such a great platform to share my journey. My name is Rupali, and I am a teacher at Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan. And today, I stand before you not just as a graduate, but as a lifelong learner who believes that learning never truly ends. We often say that education changes lives, but I believe that it does even more. I think it changes our perspectives, and it opens more opportunities for us, and moreover, it empowers us so that we can face the challenges in our lives. My life reflects this belief. I was just 22 years old when I joined Kendriya Vidyalaya as a teacher. I was too young at that time, and I had a whole future ahead of me. And for that, I had to continue my further education. But being a woman, and that to a working woman, it is a very difficult thing to continue your education. By that time, I was also married, and balancing between the professional and my personal life was quite exhausting for me. So this is when IGNOU made all the difference. Its flexible learning system was very helpful for me so that I could complete my further education. It is through this education system that I completed my B.Ed on time. And today I am a mother of a 3-year-old, and I am very proud to tell you all that I have just completed my Masters in English, which made me eligible for appearing in the DSSB PGT English exam. It is a matter of pride for me. These are not just degrees for me. These are the milestones that I have achieved to reach my dreams. When I look back today, I just don't see the degrees. I see those nights when I used to study after the long hours of work and putting my baby to sleep. IGNOU has supported me through this flexible learning system. Today, as we are remembering Professor G. Rama Reddy, so his vision feels much more meaningful to me. He dreamed of an education system in which education is accessible to all, and there are no barriers of age or distance. I consider myself a living example of his vision. Without the support and flexibility offered by IGNOU, it would have been very difficult for me to complete my education. Today, I would especially like to tell the working women like me that you should never think that it's too late, because it's not too late. It's never too late. You should never give up on your dreams just because life is too busy. It's busy for everybody. Challenges are part of our lives. So never stop dreaming. And क्योंकि कहते हैं कि लहरों से डरकर नौका पार नहीं होती और कोशिश करने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती. So once again, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to IGNOU for making quality education accessible to everybody and giving working women like me the confidence to dream bigger. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear Rupali. Thank you for sharing your journey. So many working women, including myself, can relate to you, and IGNOU is there for all of us. May I now request Bhavna to kindly share her journey. She is working as a primary teacher in MCD school. She has completed B.Ed and now is pursuing MA education from IGNOU.
सभी को नमस्कार. इग्नू के इस महान मंच पर आके अपने अनुभवों को साझा करने का ये दिन मेरे लिए ना सिर्फ बहुत सम्मान का दिन है, बल्कि ये एक बहुत यादगार और भावुक क्षण भी लेकर आया है. मेरा नाम भावना है. मैं दिल्ली नगर निगम में प्राइमरी अध्यापिका हूँ. वर्ष 2019 में मैंने इग्नू से B.Ed कार्यक्रम में प्रवेश लिया. ये वो समय था जब मेरी शादी को लगभग 6 वर्ष पूरे हो गए थे. मैं एक 4 साल की बेटी, एक जॉइंट फैमिली की अकेली बहू और एक नौकरी की जिम्मेदारी में अपना पैशन, अपनी पढ़ाई लगभग छोड़ चुकी थी और शायद कुछ भूल भी चुकी थी. ऐसे समय में मेरे जीवन साथी ने मुझे इग्नू से B.Ed करने के लिए प्रोत्साहित किया. तब मैं नहीं जानती थी कि ये निर्णय मेरे जीवन को एक नई दिशा ही दे देगा. जुलाई 2019 में B.Ed का नया सत्र शुरू हुआ. दिसंबर 2019 में कोविड-19 ने दुनिया में दस्तक दे दी. मार्च 2020 में पूरे भारतवर्ष में लॉकडाउन लग चुका था. हर तरफ कोरोना की वजह से डर और खौफ का माहौल था. कई लोग, जिनमें से एक मैं भी थी, डिप्रेशन में चले गए थे. ऐसे समय में भी कई लोगों ने, कई कर्मयोगियों ने हार नहीं मानी. इन हार ना मानने वालों में सिर्फ डॉक्टर्स, सिर्फ पुलिस ऑफिसर्स ही नहीं थे, शिक्षक भी थे. वे शिक्षक जिन्होंने ऑफलाइन से ऑनलाइन को इतना सहजता से, इतना सरलता से स्वीकार किया कि पूरी दुनिया तारीफ करने के लिए मजबूर हो गई. इग्नू का जो वर्कशॉप्स ऑफलाइन होनी थी वे ऑनलाइन ली गईं. यकीन मानिए, जो कोर्स था, जो कंटेंट था, उसको मॉडिफाई किया गया ऑनलाइन के लिए और इतने कम समय में इतनी अच्छी क्वालिटी का कंटेंट दिया गया कि कोई यकीन ही नहीं कर सकता इतने शॉर्ट टर्म के नोटिस पे ये सब चीज़ें हुई हैं. मैं जो उस टाइम पर खुद डिप्रेशन में थी, टीचर्स से मोटिवेट होकर अपने बच्चों के लिए, अपने ऑनलाइन कक्ष के लिए नए नए टीचिंग एड्स बनाने लगी. इग्नू में दी गई हर एक प्रेजेंटेशन, हर एक क्लास प्रेजेंटेशन पे दिए गए टीचर्स के फीडबैक, उनके वैल्यूएबल सुझाव, वो कोरोना के हाहाकार के बीच उस डिप्रेशन में मेडिसिन से भी बढ़कर मेरा इलाज करते गए. थैंक यू. मुझे लगता है कि शायद इन बातों पर यकीन करना थोड़ा मुश्किल होगा, बट कहा भी गया है कि ट्रूथ इज़ स्ट्रेंजर देन फिक्शन. तो ये बात सच है. जब मैं इग्नू के द्वितीय वर्ष में थी तो मैं एक कॉम्प्लिकेटेड प्रेगनेंसी से भी जूझ रही थी. एक कॉम्प्लिकेटेड प्रेगनेंसी, परिवार की जिम्मेदारी और नौकरी के साथ अगर मैं अपनी B.Ed की डिग्री पूरी कर पाई तो इसका एक बहुत बहुत बड़ा श्रेय इग्नू को जाता है. इग्नू सिर्फ एक ओपन डिस्टेंस यूनिवर्सिटी ही नहीं है, ये एक मार्ग है मेरे जैसे विद्यार्थियों के लिए अपने गोल्स को अचीव करने का, अपने एम्स को पूरा करने का, अपने जीवन को एक नई दिशा प्रदान करने का. इग्नू के लेक्चर्स, यहाँ का स्टडी मटेरियल तो जैसे गागर में सागर है. मैंने इग्नू के हर एक लेक्चर को मैंने हर एक स्टडी मटेरियल की एक एक किताब को, उसके हर एक पेज को रातों को जाग जाग कर 2-2, 3-3 बार पढ़ा और सुना। और यकीन मानिए, जितनी बार भी पढ़ा, कुछ नया, कुछ अनोखा, कुछ अलग सीखने को मिला। मैंने वर्ष 2021 में 91% मार्क्स के साथ अपनी बीएड की परीक्षा उत्तीर्ण की। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। मेरी बीएड की डिग्री की वजह से अब मैं टीजीटी प्रमोशन के लिए एलिजिबल हूँ, लेकिन लाइफ में मेरा प्रमोशन हो चुका है। टेक्नोलॉजी से डरने वाली मैं अब नई नई टेक्नोलॉजी को सीखकर, ऑनलाइन क्लासेस लेकर नई नई चीज़ों को सीखती हूँ और अपने कक्ष में, अपने क्लासरूम में उन चीज़ों का खुलकर यूज़ करती हूँ, ताकि शिक्षा का जो ज्ञान का दीप इग्नू ने मेरे दिल में जलाया है, वो मैं अपने क्लास के बच्चों के दिल में हमेशा हमेशा जला सकूँ। मैंने अध्यापिका के पद पर चल रही अपनी सेवा में भी यहाँ पे सीखी नई नई चीज़ों को और लगातार सीखकर नए नए टीचिंग मेथड्स को अपने क्लासरूम में अप्लाई किया। और मेरे प्रयासों की सराहना करते हुए मेरे विभाग दिल्ली नगर निगम ने वर्ष 2022-23 में मुझे बेस्ट टीचर अवार्ड एट जोनल लेवल से सम्मानित किया। इग्नू ने मेरे मन में ज्ञान की ज्योति को पुनर्जागृत किया है और मैंने प्रण किया है कि अब मैं इसे कभी रुकने नहीं दूंगी। इसके लिए मैं कोटि कोटि इग्नू विश्वविद्यालय, यहाँ के फैकल्टी मेंबर्स और डायरेक्टली और इनडायरेक्टली इग्नू से जुड़े हुए सभी सम्माननीय गुरुजनों का दिल से धन्यवाद करती हूँ। मैं आप सभी शिक्षकों के प्रति विशेष आभार व्यक्त करती हूँ, जिन्होंने उस मुश्किल समय में भी हार नहीं मानी और विद्यार्थियों की बेहतरी के लिए निरंतर प्रयासरत रहे। आपके प्रयास शायद किसी को सामान्य लग सकते हैं, परंतु मेरे जैसे विद्यार्थियों का आप जीवन ही बदल देते हैं। आज जब मैं यहाँ खड़ी हूँ तो इग्नू विश्वविद्यालय अपने शिक्षकों, अपने जीवन साथी और अपने परिवार के प्रति गहरी कृतज्ञता व्यक्त करना चाहती हूँ, जिन्होंने हर पल, हर कदम पर मेरी सहायता की, मुझे प्रोत्साहित किया। यहाँ आकर उन अनुभवों के बारे में बात करना सचमुच उन पलों को फिर से जीने जैसा है। मुझे यह अवसर देने के लिए धन्यवाद, मुझे यह मंच देने के लिए धन्यवाद, मेरी कहानी सुनने के लिए धन्यवाद। गुरुर ब्रह्मा गुरुर विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरा गुरुर साक्षात परब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः। मेरे जीवन में वो गुरु बनकर आने के लिए आपका हृदय से धन्यवाद।
Thank you so much for sharing your journey in such an emotional way. Yes, IGNU is indeed transforming lives every day. As an alumna and now a professor here, I can vouch for that. Now, we are indeed privileged to have with us Professor Mohan Das B. Menon, an eminent educationist and internationally respected institutional builder. Professor Menon's association with IGNU dates back to its formative years. He was a professor and founding director of School of Education at IGNU. As planning officer, he contributed to the academic planning and institutional development of the university at a time when IGNU was laying the foundations of a new paradigm in higher education. Besides his various contributions to IGNU, he was also instrumental in establishing and strengthening IGNU's initiatives under the District Primary Education Program, DPEP, and Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. Following his distinguished tenure at IGNU, Professor Menon served as chairman of the National Institute of Open Schooling, NIOS. He was also associated with Commonwealth of Learning, Canada. He also served as Deputy Vice Chancellor Academic of Wawasan Open University, Malaysia. He has advised leading organizations such as UNESCO, UNICEF, the World Bank, UNDP, DANIDA, IDRC, DFID, and the Ministry of Education, Government of India. His illustrious career includes serving as Chief and Director of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Northeast, UNRWA, Education Program for Palestine Refugees in Jordan, where he provided visionary leadership to one of the largest education systems serving refugee children and youth. May I now invite Professor Menon to deliver the memorial lecture.
It is extremely a happy situation to be back to IGNOU after a few years, like probably you can call as a prodigal son, getting back home. And nice to meet the my old staff members, the colleagues, as well as the students giving their feedback of the programs that I was also involved at that time. Chief guest of the day, Professor Pankaj Arora, Vice Chancellor, other dignitaries, staff, and students of IGNOU, my former colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen. I thank the Vice Chancellor, Professor Uma Kanjilal, also the family of Professor Ram Reddy here, Madam Pramila Reddy, and Ms. Jyoti, for inviting me to deliver this prestigious lecture. It's really an honor for me. It's an honor and a privilege I accept with deep gratitude and with a certain tenderness of feeling. This occasion takes me back 4 decades, and with it come many sweet memories. Joining IGNOU in 1987 was without a question the definitive turning point in my professional life. But the story actually begins a year before that. At the AIU annual conference in IIT Delhi, I was teaching at the Center of Advanced Study in Education in MS University of Baroda at that time, and I happened to be a delegate at the conference. I was introduced to Professor Ram Reddy by the then Vice Chancellor of Calicut University, Dr. Jayachandran. With his characteristically warm and charismatic smile, Professor Reddy told me that he had read my paper on an instructional system for the proposed Indian Open University, published in a special issue of University News in 1985, when the university was being conceived and implemented. I was pleasantly surprised. What I did not know then was he was quietly scouting those days to identify and attract the right faculty and senior staff for the new university he was building. To cut the story short, I joined IGNOU as its first and only Vice Chancellor. There was no planning office, only planning officer. There was no planning officer after that. That was the only time that position existed, working directly under the Vice Chancellor. In my first formal meeting with Professor Reddy after assuring duty in April 1987, he asked me to study the field of distance education seriously. See, I had mentioned him when he suggested that I had joined as a reader, and when he suggested that, why don't you take up the position of planning officer? I told him, I remember very clearly, I've never done any planning properly. In my own personal life, what am I going to do for the university? He suggested first to read a few books, The Open University by Lord Perry, The Planning and Management of Distance Education by Greville Rumble. He was the planning officer of UK Open University, and the theoretical writings of Otto Peters, Holmberg, and Michael Moore. And when I began functioning as planning officer and in charge of project control, because the materials and the whole programs are being developed, and there was always a target date, the material has to be over by then. So project control was an important component. He's told to me one day something I have never forgotten. Function confidently, and if you are making any mistake, it is within quotes, I will take the responsibility. That was his approach to leadership. It was, and I mean this precisely, a definition of trust. Professor Ram Reddy was a visionary, an academic leader, and an institution builder of the highest order. Above all, he was a great human being. He could draw together the finest academic and administrative talent from across the country and inspire each of them to give of their very best in building something that India had not seen before. What he called, with characteristic understatement, an out-of-the-box university. Robert Frost's lines came naturally to my mind when I think of what he did. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Professor Reddy chose the road less traveled. He chose it with his eyes open, fought for it against considerable institutional resistance, and led those of us fortunate enough to follow him with the same quiet confidence with which he had set out. And indeed, it made all the difference. IGNOU, as a puff maker, the establishment of Indira Gandhi Open University by an Act of Parliament in 1985 was one of the most significant landmarks in the entire history of Indian higher education. It fundamentally transformed how this country thought about access, equity, and possibility of democratizing university education, making higher learning available to millions who had previously been excluded from it by geography, by age, occupation, and socioeconomic circumstances. This did not happen without a struggle. The story of the IGNOU Act unfolded through distinct and at a time sharply contested historical dynamics. Professor Reddy, alongside with the then Union Education Minister, Sri K.C. Pant, spearheaded the vision of a national university standing entirely outside the existing regulatory structure. The University Grants Commission, understandably protective of its domain, was initially unsupportive, favoring instead the incorporation of distance education within its own fold. Professor Reddy's position was categorical. Only an autonomous national university directly under the Ministry of Education could democratize learning at the scale India required. His forceful advocacy and rigorous steering of the project resulted in the IGNOU Bill sailing through both houses of the Parliament in August 1985 without a single amendment. It gave IGNOU the autonomy to chart a path of development that no university in this country had previously attempted. What IGNOU then built upon that foundation was equally remarkable. It pioneered mass-scale distance learning of genuine quality and a set of innovations that were at that time genuinely novel. A multimedia instructional system combining print, audio, video, and later teleconferencing, flexible continuous evaluation that freed learners from the tyranny of single annual examination, and a credit-based modular approach that allowed adult learners to accumulate and transfer credits across programs according to their own pace and circumstances. Its earliest programs signaled this ambition clearly. The diploma in management served the large and unserved market of working professionals seeking qualification without career interruption. The diploma in distance education built for the first time, a national-wide cadre of academics trained in the theory and practice of distance education, creating the human infrastructure that the entire open education system would require if it were to grow. That was the vision. These were not just programs, they were acts of institutional vision. It is worth pausing to reflect on this, the modular approach, credit transfer, multiple entry and exit options, the blending of academic and vocational learning. These are provisions of the National Education Policy 2020. Celebrated today as transformative innovations, They were operational at IGNOU from late 1980s. Professor Reddy did not merely lead an institution, he anticipated the educational direction of the nation by more than 3 decades. Let me now turn to the central subject of the lecture, teacher education, which was one of Professor Reddy's deepest concerns and IGNOU's most enduring area of contribution. Before we can speak about teacher education with any seriousness, we need to be clear that what we actually mean by the term teacher and teaching. These are words we use so often and so loosely that their weight is sometimes lost. Teaching is not mere instruction. It is the specialized application of knowledge, skills, and professional attributes for designing and managing learning environments that meet the educational needs of both the individual learner and the wider community. Its scope ranges from pre-primary classroom to the postgraduate seminar, from face-to-face instruction to entirely online facilitation, from formal schooling to vocational, technical, and corporate training. Understood comprehensively, teaching encompasses curriculum planning and development, the preparation of learning materials, instructional transaction, learner assessment, guidance and counseling, and instructional leadership, and many more specialized areas. And the scope of it is not static. With rapid emergence of the digital learning environment, the entirety of what we mean by teaching learning process is being continuously redefined. Creating and curating digital content, facilitating online learning, conducting e-assessment, managing hybrid classrooms, all of these are now part of the professional repertoire that a teacher must possess. The meaning of teacher and the knowledge, skills, and dispositions we rightly expect of one evolves with the demands of the time. What teacher education therefore demands and what it has for too long deferred is a genuine paradigm shift. Away from the narrow perspective of pre-service training as a once and done event, and towards a vision of continuous professional development and ongoing institutional support throughout the entirety of teachers' career, linked explicitly and measurably to the learning outcomes of students. Teaching must be treated fully and seriously as the professional vocation. To understand that IGNOU's School of Education, what IGNOU's School of Education attempted to do, it is necessary to understand what it was working against. Teacher education in India has historically suffered a set of deep structural disconnects. Naming them clearly is the necessary beginning of addressing them. The most persistent is the disconnect between teacher education and different levels of schooling. Preparation for primary, elementary, secondary, and higher education have functioned as entirely separate silos with no conceptual or institutional integration between them. A teacher moving from one level to another finds no bridge and receives no support. Closely related to the disconnect between pre-service and is the pre-service and in-service training. These two dimensions of professional development are treated as if they are entirely separate concerns, when in fact they form or should form a single seamless continuum. The moment a teacher enters a classroom is not the moment at which professional development ceases. It is the moment in which it must be sustained and deepened. There is the well-documented gap between research and practice. This is another disconnect, which is not unique to education, but is particularly acute here. Teacher educators have for too long seen distanced from the classrooms they train otherwise to manage, train others to manage. Their research seldom reaches practicing teachers, and the questions that practicing teachers actually face seldom reach researchers. There is a disconnect between what schools require for their teachers and what teacher education programs actually produce. Too many graduates complete their formal training without the knowledge and competencies needed to function effectively in diverse, complex, and demanding realities of Indian classrooms. There is the intellectual isolation of teacher education institutions from each other, from subject discipline departments, from the local, national, and international communities they ought to serve. And there is perhaps most consequential in the present moment, the wide and widening divide between the technology apprehensive teacher and the digitally fluent student. A teacher whose primary orientation is towards syllabus coverage and examination performance is increasingly out of step with a generation of learners, the Gen Zs and Gen Alphas and today, who inhabit rich, interconnected, and fast-moving information environments and have every right to expect their teachers to be able to guide them within those environments. None of these disconnects was created by IGNOU's School of Education. But from its very establishment, the school took them seriously as the conditions against which a genuinely different approach to teacher education has to be built. The School of Education was one of the first schools established in IGNOU in 1987, within a year of the university's beginning its operations. From its inception, it departed from the framework that prevailed in virtually every university department of education and teacher education college in the country. Historically in India, the study of education had been confined to almost entirely to professional teacher preparation. Pre-service training at specific stages, disconnected from education as a broader academic discipline. The School of Education at IGNOU set out from the beginning to bridge this divide by treating education simultaneously as a field of academic knowledge and as a field of professional practice. And by making that integration visible in its curriculum, its content, and its transactional modes. Its approach rested on a few principles. Theoretical knowledge and practical applications must be integrated, not sequential. Learning materials must place the learner, not the teacher, at the center. Assessment must be a measure of actual competence, not merely the reproduction of content. And reach must not be sacrificed for quality. Both are achievable, provided you design for both. The postgraduate diploma in higher education, the school's first program, gave form to these principles at the highest level. It didn't start with a school education teachers program, it started with a higher education teachers. That was also part of the vision. Designed with the support of the Institute of Education at the University of London, it included a mandatory extended contact program, hands-on practical training, project discussions, and course design exercises grounded in local educational contexts while drawing on international experience. Interactive teleconferencing established as early as 1993 in partnership with the Indian Space Research Organization, connected participants from the country using one-way video and two-way video audio. So it was an interesting experience. ISRO was also experimenting on the technology. IGNOU was experimenting on pedagogy. You know, it was a very interesting partnership that we had at that time. This was extraordinary for its time, and it was characteristic of the spirit of Professor Reddy had established. If the technology exists and the need is real, find a way to bring them together. That's what he used to say. The Bachelor of Education program, recognized by the National Council of Teacher Education, was offered through the open and distance mode, and it's perhaps the school's single most consequential contribution to Indian education. We had two students who did B.Ed. Offered from the year 2000, it served thousands of in-service teachers who could not leave their classrooms for months at a time to pursue residential training. The program integrated school-based experiences and workshop-based activities across a 2-year curriculum. It, without being asked by NCT, decided to have it 2 years at that time. I remember that when we put together all the content, we actually needed only 1.5 years to take care of that. We thought, no, 1.5 years is not a proper, it's better to have 2 years. And of course, with NCT accepted later. Yeah. Certificate in guidance was, the practice was requiring learners to engage with. Tutor marked assignments involved hands-on school observation, community interaction, and activity design, activity-based assignments, activity designs. The theory and practice were not taught in sequence. They were taught together because it is how teacher actually works. It has to be situated in a social learning situation. At the elementary level, certificate in guidance and diploma in primary education programs were developed in collaboration with the National Council of Educational Research and Training. Now, I should say at this stage that we were only 6 people in the school at that time, 6 persons, 6 faculty. So we couldn't have managed everything ourselves. So we thought NCRT is nearby. They have been the people who have been supporting both, not only school education, but teacher education too. So the certificate in guidance was designed with a case-based approach to address the needs of both teachers and learners, focusing on how both together can effectively guide young children. It was neither focused on the teacher nor on the parent, but it was on the child, where both parent and teacher are important at that level. Diploma in primary education was offered initially in selected states in the northeastern region of the country, later extended to Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Jammu and Kashmir, etc. Reached thousands of untrained working teachers who would otherwise have continued classrooms without any formal qualification. This was teacher education as a social equity. It was in the deepest sense, a continuation of what Professor Reddy had it in motion. The School of Education demonstrated how multidisciplinary academic engagements, multidisciplinary educational engagements with other schools of studies can be fruitfully done by facilitating development and offer of 2 special programs. Certificate in Teaching of English as a Second Language offered by the School of Humanities in cooperation with the School of Education, and the Certificate of Teaching Primary Mathematics by the School of Sciences. So it was a joint 2 programs. The school also established the first doctoral program at IGNOU and was the first to award a PhD in education, a signal of its determination to position itself not merely as a vocational field, but as a domain of rigorous and original research. Over the years, school expanded its offerings across certificate, diploma, undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctoral levels, covering elementary education, special education, educational technology, educational leadership. What held this expansion together was not the accumulation of programs, but the consistency of a philosophy. That education as a discipline and teaching as a profession must be treated in their full complexity. That the learner must always remain at the center, and that open and distance modes are not a compromise on quality, but when designed well, a route to a distinctive quality of their own. Interestingly, I am not giving reference of the MA program in liberal here because we are talking about teacher education as a focus. Otherwise, school of education has done MA education and BA education is on now in the school, in the university. The school's commitments extended well beyond program delivery. UNESCO chair in teacher education through distance mode was established at the school in 1997. An international recognition of the quality of rigor of the work being done and platform for research, faculty development, and the production of self-learning materials for distance-based learning. Of course, it was later discontinued. Could be pursued probably further. We can go for UNESCO collaboration. The most far-reaching collaborative initiative in quality assurance was joint project undertaken by India's National Assessment and Accreditation Council and the Commonwealth of Learning, taking inspiration from the efforts of IGNOU. IGNOU was not directly involved in that project. It was the Commonwealth of Learning and NAC. This initiative brought together expert teacher educators from multiple Commonwealth nations to develop comprehensive international quality benchmarks for teacher training institutions. Its principal outputs, a quality assurance toolkit for teacher education institutions, a framework of quality indicators covering curriculum design, instructional transaction, methods, and research and development, and an anthology of best practices in teacher education drawn from institutions across the Commonwealth. This was a joint program of NAC and Commonwealth of Learning. Later, of course, there was an MOU also signed with NCTE by NAC that this could be used in teacher education colleges when they are recognized and before they are giving full recognition. This toolkit could be used to improve themselves. It is a self-appraisal sort of a toolkit. It is not to go and assess an institution. The distance education programs under District Primary Education Project, launched by Ministry of Human Resource Development with the School of Education at the National Nodal Agency, placed IGNOU at the center of a national effort to support elementary teachers and educational functionaries across the country. Allowing this model, decentralized, district and state-based, allowing individual states to develop locally specific programs without pulling teachers away from their classrooms, was a practical embodiment of the principle of open learning. The foundational approaches developed under this program were later integrated into Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, I understand, which unifies teacher training, distance learning, and school education from preschool to class 12 in alignment with the national education policy. What IGNOU pioneered in 1990s has become, in important respects, the architecture of a national system today. I would be less than frank if I did not acknowledge that IGNOU's journey in teacher education has not been without difficulties. Teacher education through the open and distance mode was faced persistent regulatory hurdles. Regulatory bodies designed for conventional residential institutions having at times applied their norms to distance education programs without adequate appreciation of the fundamentally different pedagogical model being followed. Daily on-campus micro-teaching, localized laboratory infrastructure, the physical presence assumed of learners who are in reality working teachers in remote districts. These norms applied mechanically and without sensitivity created genuine mismatches. IGNOU responded with resourcefulness by developing multimedia self-instructional modules alongside intensive counseling sessions, embedded rigorous practical school-based activities into the curriculum, and demonstrated through evidence that quality outcomes are achievable through well-designed open learning. The regulatory challenge has been eased considerably over time, but it has not disappeared. The current period of large-scale transformation in teacher education, which is happening today, which I will turn to in a moment, makes it more important than ever that regulatory frameworks be made more appropriate, demanding in their standards, but built on a genuine understanding of how open and distance learning works, and including online. Now this online is coming up, which according to me conceptually is within the open distance learning. It is part of ODL, or online also, but it doesn't matter even if we are focusing more on that. We cannot judge a river by the standards we apply onto a road. The National Education Policy 2020 represents the most consequential reconfiguration of Indian education since the National Policy on Education 1986. Its provisions for teacher education are particularly significant in NEP 2020, and I would like to engage with them seriously. The policy envisions the 4-year integrated teacher education program as a dual major holistic bachelor's degree, combining deep disciplinary knowledge with professional pedagogical preparation, a very, very creditable program that we should pursue and do that. Students pursuing this program will study a core school subject such as mathematics, history, science, etc., while simultaneously developing the pedagogical knowledge. And practical competence is required to teach it effectively. This is not a small change. It ends the historical bifurcation between academic and professional education in the preparation of teachers. A bifurcation whose consequences in the form of teacher educators distanced from subject expert have been damaging. The policy provisions multidisciplinary higher education institutions as the envisions multidisciplinary higher education institutions as a natural home for teacher education, bringing an end to the isolation of standalone teacher education colleges. It calls for teacher education to be grounded simultaneously in Indian values, traditions, and ways of knowing, and in the latest advances in the pedagogy and educational technology. It envisions by 2030 the 4-year integrated program as the minimum qualification in all schools. To those of us who have worked in the field of several decades, what is striking about these provisions is how many of these underlying principles were being worked out at IGNOU School of Education from the late 1980s onwards. Modular curricula, credit transfer, multidisciplinarity, etc. The integrated teacher education program is sometimes presented in public discourse as an entirely fresh beginning. It is better understood as the formal national codification of several decades of incremental innovations. The 4-year BA, BEd, BSc, BEd programs of the National Council of Teacher Education, NCERT, was there already, and this is, of course, an improvement on that. So these are the intellectual ancestors of that NEP 2020 now proposes. Policy, when it works well, learns from practice, and in this case, I believe it has. Implementation, however, is not a different matter from policy. A purely top-down approach to the introduction of these changes may not achieve a smooth, sustainable transformation. I'm telling with my own experience in working in the state of Kerala, contextualizing the ITEP curriculum and implementation, and what sort of difficulties in implementation. I'm sure this would be happening in other states also. The National Council of Teacher Education must facilitate multiple models of adoption at the state and institutional levels without sacrificing the content and spirit of the reform. UGC had suggested in 2022 transformation options. I think NCT has already accepted in the last year. So I think that might help. And the transformation must be accompanied by genuine institutional support, financial, regulatory, and intellectual for the thousands of teachers, institutions across the country that are being asked to change, in some cases quite fundamentally, the way they work. For many of them, I think it is important to understand, sometimes we don't appreciate that, for them it is an existence issue. Will they exist or not? And what will happen to this? I think it has to be, it can be achieved. I mean, we can go into multidisciplinary and in an integrated form, but different options may have to be there. IGNOU is, I believe, uniquely positioned. Now, coming to IGNOU, and as it has ITEP program already, which is a very positive thing, IGNOU is, I believe, uniquely positioned to support this transformation. Its multi-modal infrastructure, supporting face-to-face, open and distance, and hybrid delivery blended simultaneously, its reach across the entire country, experience with credit transfer and flexible learning pathways, and its demonstrated capacity for pedagogical innovation at scale make it an ideal national resource for a reform effort of this magnitude. The experimentation, we are at the time of experimentation, this is maybe a good crucible to start with. The 4-year integrated program, the 1 and 2-year BEd program, postgraduate and doctoral pathways, IGNOU can support all these, and in doing so, can serve as a national laboratory for the kinds of innovative, quality-assured teacher education that NEP 2020 envisions. Now to conclude, I don't know, I think I took more time, sorry about that. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I began this lecture with a personal memory, and I would like to conclude with a reflection. Professor Ram Reddy used to say in his quiet and certain ways, that IGNOU must always be a university with a difference. Not different for the sake of novelty or provocation, but different because the problem it was created to address, the educational exclusion of millions of citizens of this country, demanded solutions that the existing university system was not designed and could not be expected to provide. Over 4 decades, School of Education and IGNOU as a whole have tried to honor that charge. The results have not always been without difficulty. There have been regulatory frictions, as I mentioned, implementation challenges, and periods when the institution's wider mandate to serve as the national apex coordinating body for open and distance learning was not fully exercised as it might have been, because today it is not probably a function of IGNOU. So that's the status. But the core mission, the democratization of access to higher quality education, has been pursued with consistency and has been advanced through genuine innovation. What we say in the provisions of NEP 2020, in the movement towards multidisciplinary institutions, in the national conversation about credit frameworks and flexible learning pathways and continuous professional development for teachers, is not the arrival of a new idea. It is the now slow vindication of an old one. Traveled with Professor Reddy chose in 1985, has become, 4 decades later, the road the entire nation is being asked to take. That is, I think, the most meaningful tribute we can offer to him today. Not merely to honor his memory with words, but to carry forward his vision with the rigor, the imagination, the institutional courage, and the quiet confidence that he himself modeled for all of us who had the privilege of working with him. I am grateful for this occasion, for your patient attention, and above all, for the gift of having known Professor Ram Reddy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of everyone present here, I express my heartfelt gratitude to Professor Menon for that thought-provoking memorial lecture. I also want to thank you for sharing your experiences from formative years of IGNOU. It is very insightful to hear all these experiences and interactions with Professor Reddy with us. Thank you. And yes, we will remember that we are university with a difference, and we will keep on working on finding new solutions to new problems as they arise. Now, it is my distinct privilege to have Professor Pankaj Arora, sir, as chief guest in today's program. Sir, your presence has elevated the grace of this occasion. Professor Pankaj Arora has been serving as chairperson of the National Council for Teacher Education, NCTE, Ministry of Education, Government of India, since May 2024. A professor of education at the University of Delhi for over 27 years, he has contributed extensively to teacher education through his research, publications, and leadership roles. Actively involved in the educational reforms, he has been part of several committees for the National Education Policy 2020 and curriculum development. He served as head and dean of the Faculty of Education, CIE, University of Delhi, from September 2022 to May 2024. He has various books and research articles to his credit. So we are looking forward to listening to you. May I request Professor Pankaj Arora, sir, to kindly address the gathering.
Namaskar, good afternoon. Professor Uma Kanjilal ji, Honorable Vice Chancellor, IGNOU, Madam Pramila Reddy ji, Professor Mohandas B. Menon, Distinguished Speaker for 31st Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture today. And he presented a range of ideas starting from open and distance learning to teacher education and to experimentation and research into teacher education, as well as He gave suggestions on regulatory mechanism which should be flexible and accepting new ideas and changes. Professor Jitendra Kumar Srivastava, a good friend, registrar, IGNOU. Professor Kailash Chand Sharma ji, my senior from University of Delhi, Professor Shyam Menon sir, Professor Pushpanathan ji, faculty members, scholars, students, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to you all. Today, it's a privilege and an honor to join you all here on 31st Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture. To my understanding, this memorial lecture is an occasion to remind, to recall the beautiful memories of the visionary leader in education, especially who worked for expansion of education and gave this beautiful idea of Jan Jan Ka Vishwavidyalay. Jan Jan Ka Vishwavidyalay, education institution for all of the common people, masses, who couldn't get opportunity to reach formal education institutions. I am grateful to IGNOU for this opportunity and invitation to be here today amongst all of you. साथियों, आज का ये आयोजन सिर्फ स्मृति का एक व्याख्यान नहीं है. हमने मॉर्निंग से जो देखा सुना एक छोटा सा वीडियो जिसमें प्रोफेसर रेड्डी के एक विजनरी लीडर के कुछ ग्लिम्सेस हमारे सामने प्रेजेंट किए गए. यूनिवर्सिटी का कुल गीत बहुत इंस्पायरिंग लगा मुझे और उसमें जो शब्दों का चयन है वो बहुत ही ध्यान से सोच समझ के किया गया है और यूनिवर्सिटी के इथॉस को ट्रूली रिप्रेजेंट करता है. जन जन का विश्वविद्यालय, जैसे कि मैंने कहा, एजुकेशन फॉर ऑल, ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग, ओपन यूनिवर्सिटी. मुझे लगता है एजुकेशन के सभी इंस्टीट्यूशन ओपन इंस्टीट्यूशंस होने चाहिए. सिर्फ उनके नाम में ओपन नहीं होना चाहिए, उनके विचारों में भी ओपननेस होनी चाहिए. तो आज की इस अपॉर्चुनिटी में जब हम रिविजिट करते हैं एजुकेशनल फिलॉसफी दैट ट्रांसफॉर्म द मीनिंग ऑफ एक्सेस, द मीनिंग ऑफ इक्वलिटी एंड लाइफ लॉन्ग लर्निंग इन इंडिया, तो हमने दो एलुमनस इग्नू के बीएड प्रोग्राम की हुई दो छात्राओं को भी सुना और कैसे दिस प्लेटफॉर्म ब्रॉट अ मेजर चेंज इन देयर लाइफ. आई एम श्योर ऐसा ये दो ने रिप्रेजेंट किया उस लार्ज पॉपुलेशन को जिनकी लाइफ में ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस एजुकेशन फ़र्क लाता है. मेरी नॉलेज में शायद आज दुनिया में 10 करोड़ से ज़्यादा विद्यार्थी हैं जो ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग के थ्रू अपने आप को, अपने परिवारों को, अपने विचारों को दिशा दे सके हैं, समझ सके हैं. अगर प्रोफेसर जी.एम. रेड्डी को हम याद करते हैं तो ही वॉज नॉट ओनली अ एकेडमिक एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर बट टू माई अंडरस्टैंडिंग एंड नॉलेज ही वॉज अ विजनरी. He was an institution builder and most importantly, he was a believer in democratization of education. Democratization of education is not only a thought, it's a pedagogy. It's an idea which should be translated from a concept to a practice. As a student of political science myself, I believe that democracy is no more a way of governance, it is a way of life. How you live can reflect your faith and your confidence into democracy. At a time when higher education was largely confined to physical campuses and urban centers, Professor Reddy imagined a system where education could reach the learner instead of forcing the learner to reach to education. As the founding Vice Chancellor of this prestigious organization, Professor Reddy laid the foundations of a movement that continues to transform millions of lives. आज राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति का संदर्भ प्रोफेसर मोहन मेनन सर ने भी किया. अगर हम राष्ट्रीय शिक्षा नीति के प्रमुख सिद्धांतों और अवधारणाओं को देखें जिनमें बार बार वर्ड आता है फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी, लाइफ लॉन्ग लर्निंग, लर्नर सेंट्रिक एजुकेशन, मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी अप्रोच, डिजिटल लर्निंग, एनी टाइम एनीवेयर लर्निंग, मल्टीपल एंट्री एंड एग्जिट, ये सब विचार कहीं ना कहीं मुझे ऐसा लगता है जितना मैंने सुना और पढ़ा प्रोफेसर रेड्डी को, तो उनके विजनरी एजुकेशनिस्ट में 20 साल पहले ये रिफ्लेक्ट ये विचार उनके थे और उन विचारों के साथ ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग के संस्थान खुले और इन संस्थानों ने हमारी शिक्षा को जन जन तक पहुंचाने में महत्वपूर्ण भूमिका अदा की। हम सब ने स्वामी विवेकानंद का एक कथन सुना है, इफ लर्नर कैन नॉट कम टू एजुकेशन, लेट एजुकेशन रीच टू द लर्नर। और मुझे लगता है ये सिर्फ एक स्लोगन नहीं है, ये ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग का एक फिलॉसफी है, एक दर्शन है। ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग गुणवत्ता से समझौता नहीं है, ये अवसरों का विस्तार है। और मैं इसे कहता हूँ कि डिस्टेंस इन ज्योग्राफी मस्ट शुड नेवर बिकम डिस्टेंस इन अपॉर्चुनिटी। अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ डिस्टेंस के बाद भी पहुँचती हैं, आती हैं, और ख़ासकर भारत में जो विशाल और विविधतापूर्ण देश है, ये विचार बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है कि हम एजुकेशन के लिए ज्योग्राफिकल डिस्टेंसेस, फिजिकल डिस्टेंसेस को बैरियर ना बनने दें। इंडिया इज़ अ कंट्री विद एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी डाइवर्सिटी। You name it and you will find multiple examples of that diversity in the system. Our learners come from different geographies, different linguistic background, different socio-economic realities, and different circumstances of life. For many learners, conventional education is not always possible. जैसा हमारी सेकेंड लर्नर जब MCD स्कूल में पढ़ाते हुए बता रही थी कि सेकेंड टाइम उन्होंने एक डिफ़िकल्ट प्रेगनेंसी, फैमिली रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज़, स्कूल की नौकरी के साथ साथ जब पढ़ने का सोचा तो ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग ने उन्हें रास्ता दिखाया और इग्नू ने एक अपॉर्चुनिटी दी। ये रिफ्लेक्ट करता है कि ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस इज़ ट्रूली डेमोक्रेटिक, ट्रूली इंक्लूसिव एंड एम्पावरिंग द पीपल एंड गिविंग contributing to social justice, which is a larger goal of the society. This is why institutions like IGNOU occupy such an important place in Indian educational landscape. दोस्तों, पिछले कुछ दिनों मुझे NIOS के चेयरपर्सन की जिम्मेवारी निभाने का एक छोटा सा मौका मिला। 9 महीने के पीरियड में मैंने जब NIOS को नज़दीक से देखा और समझा तो मैंने देखा कि द एक्सपीरियंस स्ट्रेंथन माई फेथ इन द ट्रांसफॉर्मेटिव पावर ऑफ ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग। NIOS में आई रियलाइज्ड कि वो स्टूडेंट्स हु हैड डिसकंटिन्यूड फॉर्मल एजुकेशन, वो बहुत वजह से डिसकंटिन्यू हुए। हम अक्सर मान लेते हैं कि शायद वो कोप अप नहीं कर पाए फॉर्मल एजुकेशन। नो, दिस इज़ नॉट द सिंगल रीज़न। बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स फैमिली रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज़ की वजह से। एक इंटरनेशनल शूटर मुझे वहाँ मिला जो शायद 32 मेडल्स इंटरनेशनल जीत चुका है और अपनी फॉर्मल एजुकेशन कंटिन्यू करने के लिए उसने ओपन स्कूल को चूज़ किया। एक एंटरप्रेन्योर, यंग एंटरप्रेन्योर 15 साल का, जिसने अपनी कंपनी इस्टेब्लिश की, ही इज़ अ स्टूडेंट ऑफ ओपन डिस्टेंस लर्निंग एट NIOS. Lot of working young children who are supporting their families are part of open and distance learning. And women returning to learning after several years has been evident through the experience. Now, learners from remote and undeserved regions, children whose life circumstances didn't fit within the structure of conventional school system. For many of them, open schooling and open university bring a chance, bring an opportunity. National Education Policy inclusive education की बात करती है, and I would like to mention that this visionary document under the able guidance and leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, India has embarked upon one of the most ambitious educational transformations in contemporary India through NEP 2020. ये एक ब्लूप्रिंट है फ्यूचर की एजुकेशन का, जिसमें हमने सपना देखा कि हम बाय 2035 GER इन हायर एजुकेशन को 50% तक लेके जाएंगे। अब पिछले 70 साल में, 65 साल में जो हायर एजुकेशन का GER 27-28% पहुंचा है, उसे अगले 20 साल में, 15 साल में NEP ने एजेंडा हमें दिया 50%, ऑलमोस्ट डबल करने का। तो मैं सोचता हूं कि ये डबल तभी हो पाएगा, ये 50% का रियलिस्टिक टारगेट तभी हम अचीव कर पाएंगे जब हम ओपन डिस्टेंस लर्निंग, डिजिटल स्कूल जैसे प्लेटफॉर्म्स को प्रमोट करेंगे, फेथ करेंगे और सपोर्ट करेंगे। एवरी लर्नर मैटर एंड एवरी लर्नर मस्ट हैव एक्सेस टू क्वालिटी एजुकेशन। आज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में NEP के साथ अगर मैंने जोड़ा अपनी बात को, तो मेन स्ट्रीम्ड which have been coordinated with ODL movement pioneered decades ago. Now, theme for this memorial lecture is teacher education. And I myself being a teacher educator and presently holding the responsibility of chairperson NCTE, National Regulatory Body for Teacher Education. जब हम टीचर एजुकेशन में डिस्कशंस करते हैं ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन के, तो एक इम्पॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन हमारे सामने आता है, हु प्रिपेयर द पीपल, हु प्रिपेयर द नेशन? द आंसर इज सिंपल, टीचर एजुकेटर्स shape teachers and teachers help shaping the students' lives, students' impressions. Therefore, teacher education occupies a unique place in the entire education ecosystem. As rightly stated in NEP 2020, no education system can rise above the quality of its teachers. As a teacher educator, I personally believe that teacher education is backbone of entire education system. अगर आपको शिक्षा में परिवर्तन लाना है, सुधार लाना है, तो आपको अध्यापक शिक्षा में उसकी शुरुआत करनी चाहिए. अध्यापकों में वो एडेप्टिबिलिटी, वो इनोवेटिवनेस और वो रिसेप्टिवनेस आनी चाहिए जो हम समाज में देखना चाहते हैं. एंड इफ वी नीड एक्सीलेंट टीचर्स, वी नीड टू हैव एक्सीलेंट टीचर एजुकेटर्स. प्रोफेसर मोहन मेनन भी एक टीचर एजुकेटर हैं और मैं भी एक टीचर एजुकेटर हूँ. आज के संदर्भ में टीचर एजुकेशन सिर्फ एक एजुकेशनल प्रोग्राम नहीं है, ये राष्ट्र निर्माण का एक आधार है. अगर हमें 2047 के लक्ष्य को प्राप्त करना है, विकसित भारत का जो सपना हम देख रहे हैं उसे साकार करना है, तो मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि शिक्षा एक महत्वपूर्ण औजार है, एक महत्वपूर्ण हथियार है जो ना सिर्फ इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट की तरफ लेके जाएगा बल्कि सोशल, डेमोक्रेटिक और इंक्लूसिव समाज की तरफ हमें लेके जाएगा. आज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में टीचर एजुकेटर्स की दुनिया बदल रही है. टेक्नोलॉजी इज ट्रांसफॉर्मिंग वर्क प्लेसेस. नॉलेज इज एक्सपेंडिंग एट एन अनप्रेसिडेंटेड पेस. टेक्नोलॉजी की जब हम बात करते हैं, प्रोफेसर मोहन मेनन ने भी की, टेक्नोलॉजी एक ऐसा बहता हुआ पानी है जो अपना रास्ता स्वयं बनाती है. आप चाहें ना चाहें, आप पसंद करें ना करें, टेक्नोलॉजी आपकी लाइफ का हिस्सा बनती जा रही है. हम सब स्मार्टफोन यूज़ करने वाली जनरेशन को जेन जी कहने लगे हैं और जेन जी का बिहेवियर स्टडी करने के लिए बहुत सारे साइकोलॉजिस्ट अलग अलग साइकोलॉजिकल टूल्स का इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. टेक्नोलॉजी मिड 1980s में जब मैं कॉलेज का स्टूडेंट हुआ, उन दिनों कंप्यूटर्स इंडिया में आ रहे थे और बड़ी चिंता थी कि एक एक कंप्यूटर 20-20 लोगों के रोजगार ख़त्म कर देगा. तो एज यंग मैन इन द यूनिवर्सिटी सिस्टम हम कंप्यूटर्स और उससे जुड़ी टेक्नोलॉजी का विरोध करते थे, प्रोटेस्ट करते थे और इस डर के साथ कि ये बहुत सारी नौकरियां खा जाएगा, हम इसमें चिंता में आते थे. लेकिन धीरे धीरे हमने देखा कि एक नया युग 2000 तक आते आते 15-18 साल का हमने ऐसा युग देखा जिसमें काम करने के तरीके बदले, एम्प्लॉयमेंट के तरीके बदले. काम करने के साथ साथ डेटा एक बिग साइंस की तरह, डेटा एनालिसिस एक बिग साइंस की तरह निकल कर आया. 21st सेंचुरी के जो टूल्स हैं उसमें फिर टेक्नोलॉजी एक नई दिशा दिखा रही है. आज स्कूल्स आर नो लॉन्गर एक्सपेक्टेड ओनली टू इम्पार्ट इंफॉर्मेशन. They are expected to nurture creativity. They are supposed to develop critical thinking and collaboration with value enrichment. आज का विद्यार्थी 20, 25, 30 साल पुराने विद्यार्थियों से बिल्कुल अलग है. वो जब स्कूल में है, क्लास में है, तो उसकी सोच हम टीचर से कहीं आगे है. उसके पास भी नॉलेज के वो सोर्सेज हैं जो हम टीचर्स के पास हैं. तो ऐसे में जो स्टूडेंट है वो सीखने के तरीकों में बदलाव चाहता है, वो कम्युनिकेट करने के अलग माध्यम यूज़ करना चाहता है और वो इन्फॉर्मेशन को बड़े अलग तरीके से ना सिर्फ एक्सेस करता है बल्कि एनालाइज करता है. उसके पास इंटरप्रिटेशन के भी बहुत सारे ऑप्शंस अवेलेबल हैं. ऐसे में भावी शिक्षक को भविष्य की आवश्यकताओं के अनुरूप तैयार करना ना सिर्फ एक चुनौती है बल्कि एक आवश्यकता है. As we often say, the teacher of tomorrow cannot be prepared using the pedagogies of yesterday, We need to develop pedagogies of modern era. आज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में NEP 2020 के संदर्भ में NCTE अपनी इस रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी को आगे बढ़ाते हुए 3 नए प्रोग्राम टीचर एजुकेशन में इंट्रोड्यूस कर चुका है। प्री सर्विस में ITAP, जिसमें इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ पेडागोजी एंड कंटेंट की बात की गई, जिसे प्रोफेसर मोहन मेनन ने बताया, डुअल मेजर डिग्री। और इसके साथ साथ इन सर्विस टीचर्स के लिए पहली बार भारत में नेशनल मेंटरिंग मिशन का शुरुआत हुई। डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म के ऊपर NCT के हमारे पास इस समय लगभग 6,000 से ज़्यादा मेंटर्स हैं और हम एक साल में 12,000 से ज़्यादा डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म के थ्रू, ऑनलाइन सेशंस के थ्रू हैंड होल्डिंग कर रहे हैं उन टीचर्स का जो कुछ नया सीखना चाहते हैं, चाहे वो अनुभवी हैं या बिगिनिंग फेज में हैं। और ऐसे ही आपसे साझा करते हुए मुझे खुशी है, आप में से बहुत सारे साथियों को पता भी होगा कि NPST नेशनल प्रोफेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स फॉर टीचर्स, प्रोफेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स हम सब के अपने अपने हैं, हम सब ने कहीं ना कहीं से एक्वायर किए, अपने लिए डिफाइन किए, लेकिन फॉर्मल नेशनल प्रोफेशनल स्टैंडर्ड्स को डिफाइन करना और उन्हें टीचर्स के ग्रोथ के साथ जोड़ने का एक नया मिशन NEP ने दिया और NCT इस पर भी काम कर रहा है। और पिछले साल केंद्रीय विद्यालय, नवोदय विद्यालय और CBSE के स्कूल्स को मिलाकर हमने लगभग 18,000 टीचर्स के साथ ये ओरिएंटेशन किया है, जो इस साल और गति पकड़ेगा। भारत में कुल 1 करोड़ से ज़्यादा स्कूल टीचर्स हैं। इन 1 करोड़ टीचर्स तक पहुंचने के लिए पॉलिसी ने 2030 तक की हमें समय सीमा दी है। पिछले कुछ सालों में एक महत्वपूर्ण शिक्षा जो अध्यापक शिक्षा में आई है वो है टेक्नोलॉजी, और ये ऑप्शनल नहीं है, ये मैंडेटरी है, कंपल्सरी है। इसके बिना अब आगे बढ़ने का रास्ता नहीं खुलेगा। The question today is not whether we should go for it or no. The real question is how can technology be used meaningfully, ethically and effectively. Ethically deserves a special mention, क्योंकि टेक्नोलॉजी के साथ साथ बहुत सारा वैल्यू सिस्टम और एथिक्स और पायरेशन कॉपिंग करने का जो कल्चर बढ़ रहा है। टेक्नोलॉजी नीड टू बी इम्प्रूविंग द एंगेजमेंट and supporting personalized learning. It can promote equality and expand opportunities for all the learners across India. हमें याद रखना होगा कि लर्निंग ज़्यादा फ्लेक्सिबल, इंक्लूसिव और लर्नर सेंट्रिक होनी है, तो साथ ही साथ टेक्नोलॉजी को पावरफुल सर्वेंट बनना है, ना कि मास्टर। टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे कंट्रोल में होनी चाहिए, ना कि हम टेक्नोलॉजी के कंट्रोल में होने चाहिए। NEP rightly emphasized technology should support pedagogy, not drive pedagogy. हमारा लक्ष्य डिजिटल फर्स्ट नहीं बल्कि लर्नर फर्स्ट ही रहना चाहिए। टेक्नोलॉजी शुड स्ट्रेंथन ह्यूमन कनेक्शंस इन एजुकेशन, नॉट वीकन देम। आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस एक नया कॉन्सेप्ट है और उसे 5th इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन की तरह कई लोग मान रहे हैं, देख रहे हैं कि ये जो बदलाव लाएगा हमारे जीवन में वो अपने आप में एक इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन होगा। आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस हमारे सीखने के तरीके को, काम करने के तरीके को, कम्युनिकेट करने के तरीके को चेंज कर रहा है। इट कैन जनरेट लर्निंग रिसोर्सेज, इट कैन सपोर्ट असेसमेंट एंड फीडबैक, इट कैन आइडेंटिफाई लर्निंग गैप्स एंड इट कैन प्रोवाइड पर्सनलाइज्ड लर्निंग पाथवेज। लेकिन इसके साथ साथ फिर भी हम ये कहना चाहते हैं कि AI एक्स्ट्रा ऑर्डिनरी पॉसिबिलिटीज़ खोल रहा है। AI एनेबल्ड लर्निंग एनालिटिक्स कैन आइडेंटिफाई लर्नर्स हु नीड सपोर्ट। NIOS में हमने AI के थ्रू जो CBSE में या स्टेट बोर्ड में बच्चे फेल हो जाते थे उनके साथ रिलेशन डेवलप करना स्टार्ट किया और NIOS मित्र के नाम से एक ऐप बनाया जिसमें वो बच्चे अपने आप को रजिस्टर करें तो NIOS विल रीच आउट टू देम। तो टेक्नोलॉजी का यूज़ हम स्टूडेंट्स तक पहुंचने में करें। इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक IGNOU ये टेक्नोलॉजीज कैन सिग्निफिकेंटली एनहेंस लर्नर सपोर्ट सिस्टम एंड लर्नर सक्सेस रेट। AI हैज़ ऑलरेडी एंटर्ड इनटू एजुकेशन, हमें इससे डरना नहीं है, ये एक चुनौती है, टीचर एजुकेशन में भी है और बाकी डिसिप्लिन्स में भी है। The real challenge is preparing education who can use AI wisely. और इसमें AI की जब हम बात करते हैं तो AI must augment human intelligence, not replace human intelligence. वर्चुअल स्कूल एक नई रियलिटी है। आप में से कई लोगों को पता होगा कि 5-6 प्रोमिनेंट वर्चुअल स्कूल ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस काम करना शुरू कर चुके हैं देश में, जिसमें ज़्यादातर अभी प्राइवेट हैं। लेकिन एजुकेशन पॉलिसी ने इस आइडिया को जब फ्लेक्सिबल तरीके से प्रेजेंट किया तो वर्चुअल स्कूल एज्यूम्स ग्रेट सिग्निफिकेंस इन कमिंग डेज। ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग एक आइडिया है, वर्चुअल स्कूल दूसरा आइडिया है, ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन एक तीसरा आइडिया है। वर्चुअल स्कूल की बात मैं खासकर इसलिए कर रहा हूँ बिकॉज वर्चुअल स्कूल हैज़ पोटेंशियल दैट लर्नर्स इन रिमोट एरियाज तक पहुँचा जा सकता है। शॉर्ट स्पैन में हम बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स को, चिल्ड्रन विद स्पेशल नीड्स को एड्रेस कर सकते हैं। वर्किंग लर्नर्स की ज़िंदगी से जुड़ा जा सकता है और फ्लेक्सिबल लर्निंग पाथवेज प्रमोट किया जा सकता है। दिस रिफ्लेक्ट्स द कोर स्पिरिट ऑफ NEP 2020, वन साइज डजंट फिट ऑल। Education system must adapt to learners, not the other way around. However, we must remember virtual school may have virtual classrooms, but they can never have virtual teachers. Teachers तो आप और हम रहेंगे, स्टूडेंट से कनेक्ट करेंगे, इमोशन डेवलप करेंगे, तभी हमारा क्लासरूम सीखने का क्षेत्र बनेगा, चाहे वो वर्चुअल मोड में हो या फिजिकल मोड में हो या डिस्टेंस मोड में हो। इक्वालिटी एंड डिजिटल डिवाइड एक अलग इशू है जिस पे चिंता सबको है और उसका समाधान आने वाले समय में आएगा, ऐसा मेरी पूरी ऑप्टिमिस्ट आइडिया है, ऑप्टिमिस्ट सोच है मेरी इसके ऊपर। रूरल और अर्बन डिस्पैरिटीज़ हैं सोसाइटी में, एक्सेस टू डिवाइस एंड कनेक्टिविटी एक सीरियस इशू है। डिजिटल लिटरेसी इज़ रिक्वायर्ड फॉर ऑल, टू द टीचर्स एज वेल एज टू द स्टूडेंट्स। और भारत जैसे एक विशाल देश में टेक्नोलॉजी शुड बिकम अ ब्रिज एंड नॉट अ बैरियर। और इसके लिए हमें सुनिश्चित करना है कि जो विद्यार्थी सिर्फ इसलिए कोई पीछे ना रह जाए कि उसके पास रिसोर्सेज की कमी थी, संसाधनों की कमी थी। आज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में इग्नू का रेलिवेंस और बढ़ जाता है और महत्वपूर्ण हो जाता है, और इग्नू को ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन की तरफ जाने का रास्ता भी देता है, जिस पर कांजीलाल मैडम बहुत अच्छे से इनिशिएट कर चुकी हैं आइडियाज़। ओपन लर्निंग डज नॉट लोअर स्टैंडर्ड्स, इट लोअर बैरियर्स। इग्नू ने प्रोफेसर जी राम रेड्डी के लीडरशिप में जो जर्नी स्टार्ट की थी, आज हम देखते हैं उसमें कई नए आयाम जुड़ते जा रहे हैं। अगर मैं अपनी बात को कंक्लूड करूं तो मैं कहना चाहूँगा, टेक्नोलॉजी मस्ट नॉट merely be adopted, it must be thoughtfully integrated. Artificial intelligence must not replace human intelligence, it must augment human potential. Open and distance learning must not remain on the margins of educational discourse, it must become one of the central pillars of Indian learning ecosystem. आज की आवश्यकता टेक्नोलॉजी को अडॉप्ट करने की है, आज की आवश्यकता टेक्नोलॉजी विद ह्यूमैनिटी की है, इनोवेशन विद इंक्लूजन की है, एक्सीलेंस विद इक्वलिटी की है। और आज एजुकेशन शुड बी डिजाइन्ड अराउंड द लर्नर एंड लर्नर शुड नॉट बी अराउंड द सिस्टम। ये एक विचार नहीं है, बल्कि भारत जैसे विशाल देश की एक राष्ट्रीय आवश्यकता है। मैं अपनी बात को एक कोट से समाप्त करता हूँ। एजुकेशन इज मोस्ट पावरफुल मीडियम फॉर एम्पावरमेंट एंड नेशन बिल्डिंग। और इस नेशन बिल्डिंग की यात्रा में शिक्षण संस्थान, ओपन एंड डिस्टेंस लर्निंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस, इन सब को कलेक्टिवली काम करना होगा। और इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम को, इंडियन इथॉस को और मॉडर्निटी को, 21st सेंचुरी चैलेंजेस को साथ साथ बैलेंस करते हुए हमें आगे जाना होगा। ओनली देन राम रेड्डी मेमोरियल लेक्चर की सार्थकता है और उनके विचारों को हम मूर्त रूप देने की तरफ जाएंगे। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
Thank you so much, sir, for a very thought-provoking lecture. Yes, a nation's future is written in its classrooms and its teacher hold the pen. And then teacher education is a backbone for entire education system. May I now request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Madam Professor Uma Kanjilal, to deliver the presidential address.
Respected Chief Guest for the 31st Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture, Professor Pankaj Arora, Chairman of NCT. So thank you for your insightful address, where you have taken us from the conventional system to the futuristic virtual system that we are talking already about. Distinguished Speaker of the Day, Professor Mohan Menon, former Deputy Vice Chancellor of Awasan University in Malaysia, and also the founding director of School of Education at IGNOU. Sir, thank you very much for sharing your inspirational journey at IGNOU, and also, placing the importance of ODL in teacher education, as well as you mentioned about the way forward that is going in, and also talking about the ITEP program. Thanks a lot for that. Respected Srimati Pramila Reddy ji, wife of late Professor G. Ram Reddy, Srimati Gaddam Jyoti, daughter of Professor Ram Reddy, two learners whom we have listened to. They shared their emotional journey and placed on record the importance of ODL system and how IGNOU has helped them in their professional journey. Thanks a lot for sharing. It was quite emotional, actually. Distinguished panelists for the evening session, Professor V.N. Verghese, Professor Kailash Chandra Sharma, and Professor Pushpanandan Karnapa, Professor Jitendra Srivastav, Registrar, IGNOU, esteemed guests, my colleagues from IGNOU, students, and the entire IGNOU fraternity who have joined here in person and also virtually. Good evening to all. The 31st Professor G. Ram Reddy Memorial Lecture is not merely an annual academic event, but a celebration of an extraordinary educational visionary whose ideas continue to shape higher education in India and beyond. Every year on this occasion, we pause to remember Professor G. Ram Reddy, not merely as IGNOU's founding Vice Chancellor, but as the architect in India's open and distance learning movement, a pioneer who transformed education from a privilege for a few into an opportunity for millions. Professor Reddy believed that education has meaning only when it reaches those who have traditionally been excluded from its boundaries: the rural learners, the working professionals, the homemakers, the learner with disabilities, the prisoners seeking second chance, and the elderly learners pursuing knowledge simply for the joy of learning. Today, after 4 decades of IGNOU, IGNOU stands as a living testimony to that vision. With more than 3.9 million students, a nationwide network of 70 regional centers and 2,000 plus learner support centers, 25 international partner institutions, 334 academic programs across 50 disciplines, 46 online programs, 250 plus SWAYAM courses, and 7 SWAYAM Prabha and IGNOU Gyan Darshan educational television channels. IGNOU continues to demonstrate that quality and inclusivity can coexist. As Professor Reddy envisioned, education is truly a public good. This year's memorial lecture is particularly significant. Its theme, learners' voices, transforming lives and impacting futures, reminds us that institutions do not exist for themselves. They exist for learners. Every innovation, every policy, every curriculum, and every technology ultimately derives its value from the lives it transforms. It is therefore most appropriate that today's memorial lecture focuses on IGNOU's teacher education initiatives and the transformative changes in the Indian educational landscape. The National Education Policy 2020 has reaffirmed that what Professor Reddy advocated decades ago, that education must be flexible, multidisciplinary, learner-centric, technology-enabled, and inclusive. Many principles that we proudly discuss today, multiple pathways, lifelong learning, learner autonomy, technology-enabled education, academic mobility, and community engagement were already embedded in the philosophy underpinning IGNOU's establishment. However, as we move towards Viksit Bharat 2047, our greatest responsibility lies not only in educating learners, but also in preparing those who educate them. Teacher educators are the architects of India's future teaching workforce. The quality of school education can never exceed the quality of teacher education. This makes today's theme especially relevant. The future teacher educator will require competencies that extend far beyond disciplinary knowledge. They must possess expertise in digital pedagogy, artificial intelligence, blended learning, educational research, competency-based assessment, inclusive education, and ethical use of emerging technologies. They must also inspire creativity, critical thinking, empathy, and lifelong learning among future teachers. Technology is transforming education today at an unprecedented pace. AI is reshaping teaching, assessment, student support, and educational administration. Yet, we must remember an important principle: technology should never replace teachers. Technology must empower teachers. It must help personalize learning, support inclusion, strengthen pedagogy, enhance assessment, and expand educational opportunities for every learner, irrespective of geography or background. This balanced approach reflects IGNOU's philosophy of purposeful technology integration. At IGNOU, we are embracing this transformation responsibly. Our journey is no longer only from print to digital. It is from open university to digital, or as Professor Arora mentioned, virtual university. And now towards an AI-enabled, learner-centric university, where technology enhances human capability while upholding the values of equity, accessibility, and academic excellence. As India's national open university, we have a unique responsibility. We must continue to develop flexible teacher education programs, promote continuous professional development, support practicing teachers through lifelong learning opportunities, and strengthen research into digital and inclusive pedagogy. Teacher education today must be interdisciplinary, evidence-based, and future-oriented. It must also remain deeply human. While technologies evolve rapidly, the values of compassion, ethics, integrity, and social responsibility remains timeless. These were the values that Professor G. Ram Reddy lived by throughout his life. His contribution extends well beyond IGNOU. He played a pioneering role in strengthening open universities across Asia, helped establishment of Bangladesh Open University and Sri Lanka Open University, and help shape international cooperation in distance education through the Commonwealth of Learning Association of Open Universities. His vision was globally yet always rooted in the needs of ordinary learners. Today's program also features an important panel discussion on teacher education for the 21st century, innovation, inclusion, and building teachers' competence. I'm confident the deliberations will yield valuable ideas to strengthen teacher education in line with NEP 2020 and the aspirations of the knowledge-driven India. On behalf of the entire IGNOU fraternity, I extend my sincere gratitude to our chief guest, Professor Pankaj Arora, distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Mohan Menon, all eminent panelists, and every participant who has joined us today. As we remember Professor G. Ram Reddy, let us also renew our collective commitment. Let us ensure that every learner has an opportunity to learn. Let us ensure that every teacher has an opportunity to grow. Let us ensure that every educational institution becomes a center of innovation, inclusion, and excellence. And above all, let us continue to build an education system where no learner is left behind. That will be the most meaningful tribute we can pay to the remarkable legacy of Professor G. Ram Reddy. I conclude with the timeless Indian idyll, Sa Vidyaya Ya Vimuktaya. True education is that which liberates. May IGNOU continue to carry forward this vision and transform countless more lives in the years ahead. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for such inspiring words. Now I invite Dr. Shyama Prasad Raut, Deputy Registrar General Administration, IGNOU, to give a vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, distinguished luminaries, honored guests, esteemed colleagues, students of the university, and faculty members. It is my distinct honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks on behalf of the university on this momentous occasion. At the outset, we express our deepest gratitude to our esteemed chief guest, Professor Pankaj Arora, sir, Chairman NCT. Thank you for gracing this august gathering and for delivering an address that was both profoundly insightful and inspiring. Your illustrious journey across the various committees of NEP 2020, alongside your pioneering contributions to curriculum development, adolescence, and democratic education, stands as a testament to your unyielding commitment to educational reform. Your words have not only enlightened us, but also ignited a strong sense of motivation among our students and faculty. We also extend our sincere appreciation to Professor Mohandas B. Menon for delivering this year's prestigious memorial lecture. Your evocative address truly resonated with the audience, reflecting the visionary leadership you have long demonstrated across national and international forums. It fills our heart with immense pride to count you as a cherished member of the IGNOU family. Our profound appreciation goes to Mrs. Reddy ma'am, whose presence today has added immense grace and dignity to this event. Thank you, ma'am, for kindly consenting to be with us today. We are sincerely grateful to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Uma Kanjilal ma'am, whose sagacious guidance and unwavering support has been our North Star in the navigating every facet of this event. A special debt of thanks is owed to Professor Jiten Srivastav sir, Registrar Administration and Chairperson of the Organizing Committee, for his meticulous leadership and execution. We are profoundly indebted to the eminent panelists for our upcoming panel discussion. Professor Sasikala Vanjari, Vice Chancellor, NIPA, New Delhi. Professor N.B. Varghese, former Vice Chancellor, NIPA and distinguished visiting professor, IIT Bombay. Professor Karanam Puspanadam, Head of the Department of Educational Administration, MS University, Vadodara. Professor Kailash Chandra Sharma, Chairperson, Haryana State Higher Education Council. Thank you, ma'am and sirs, for accepting our invitation and lending your formidable scholarship to our deliberations. We extend a special word of appreciation to our sign language experts, Ms. Veena Singh and Ms. Deepali, for their invaluable assistance in making this event inclusive. Our immense gratitude also goes to the chairperson and members of all the committees of this event, whose dedicated support is truly praiseworthy. Furthermore, I wish to acknowledge the hard work of the dedicated officers and staff of RSD, EMPC, COE, CMD, Finance and Account, the Horticulture Cell, GA, the Security Cell and International Division, and the Computer Division, etc. Your seamless coordination transformed our collective vision into reality. Last but certainly not least, we extend our warmest thanks to you, our magnificent audience, joining us both here and in the hall and virtually across the country. To our students, faculty and staff, your enthusiastic participation and keen intellectual curiosity have truly breathed life into this event. As we conclude this segment, we depart not merely enriched with new knowledge, but inspired with a renewed sense of purpose. May I request you all to please stay tuned as we transition into what promises to be deeply engaging and intellectually stimulating panel discussion ahead in the second half of this event. Thank you once again. Jai Hind.
All of you are requested to kindly rise for national song and national anthem.
Vande Mataram गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा। विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा। तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे। गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता। जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे।
Thank you. With the permission of Chair, we close the program.